The research ship Starlight's Edge drifted through the dark void near the Veil Nebula, its hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Captain Zexai stood on the bridge, his 4 crystalline arms moving across the control panels with practiced ease. His blue-tinted skin caught the light from the displays as he studied the readings before him. "Captain, we are approaching the coordinates," announced Chief Science Officer Vorth from her station. The tall, insectoid alien's compound eyes reflected the green glow of her scanner displays. Her chitinous fingers clicked rapidly across the controls as she fine-tuned the sensors. "Excellent work, Vorth. What are you detecting?" Zexai asked, moving closer to her station. The bridge hummed quietly around them, filled with the soft sounds of advanced alien technology. "The structure is massive, Captain. Much larger than our initial scan suggested. It appears to be constructed from materials I have never encountered before. The energy readings are strange," Vorth replied, her voice carrying a note of excitement. Engineer Kill floated near the rear of the bridge, his gaseous form contained within a sophisticated mechanical suit. The suit's speakers crackled as he spoke. "The power systems are operating at peak efficiency, Captain. We can maintain position here for several days if needed for a thorough investigation." Dr. Yenna looked up from her medical station, her scaled, green skin reflecting the bridge lights. The Reptani medical officer had been monitoring the crew's health during their long journey to this remote sector. "All crew members are in good health, Captain. We are ready to begin the archaeological survey." Captain Zexai felt a surge of pride as he looked around at his diverse crew. The Galactic Research Consortium had assembled this team from multiple species, each bringing their unique expertise to explore the mysteries of ancient civilizations. This discovery could change everything they knew about the galaxy's history. "Begin detailed scans of the structure," Zexai ordered. "I want to know everything about this object before we proceed." The crew worked efficiently, their various instruments probing the ancient derelict floating before them. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, with strange geometric patterns carved into its surface. It looked like nothing any known civilization had ever built. "Captain, the material composition is beyond our current understanding," Vorth reported after several minutes of intensive scanning. "The structure appears to be millions of years old, yet it shows no signs of decay or damage from cosmic radiation." "Fascinating," Zexai murmured. "This could be evidence of the first civilization, the legendary builders who disappeared before any of our species reached the stars." Engineer Kill's mechanical suit approached the captain's station. "Sir, I am detecting some unusual energy fluctuations from our own ship. The readings are inconsistent with normal operations." Dr. Yenna frowned at her displays. "I am also seeing irregularities in the life support systems. The fluctuations are minor, but they should not be occurring." A low vibration suddenly ran through the ship, causing everyone on the bridge to look around in concern. The lights flickered briefly before returning to normal. "Kill, report," Captain Zexai commanded, his voice sharp with authority. The engineer's gaseous form swirled within his containment suit as he rapidly accessed the ship's systems. "Captain, we have a serious problem. The main engine core is showing critical instabilities. The quantum containment field is fluctuating beyond safe parameters." "How is that possible?" Zexai demanded. "The engines were fully serviced before we departed." "I do not know, sir. The readings suggest some kind of external interference, but I cannot identify the source. The containment field is degrading rapidly." Another vibration shook the ship, this one stronger than the first. Several console displays flickered and went dark before coming back online. Dr. Yenna's voice carried a note of alarm as she reported her findings. "Captain, I am detecting increased radiation levels throughout the ship. The levels are still within safe limits, but they are climbing steadily." "Kill, how long do we have?" Zexai asked, his training taking over as he began to assess their options. "At the current rate of degradation, complete engine failure will occur within 2 hours, the engineer reported grimly. "If the containment field collapses, the resulting explosion will destroy the ship instantly." "Can you stabilize the field?" "I am trying, Captain, but the interference is too strong. Every time I compensate for one fluctuation, another develops elsewhere in the system." Vorth looked up from her science station with wide, compound eyes. Captain, could the ancient structure be causing this? The energy readings I detected earlier might be some kind of defensive system. It is possible, Zexai acknowledged. But we cannot move away from the structure if our engines are failing. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Several crew members had to grab onto their stations to keep from falling. Captain, Kill announced urgently, the degradation is accelerating. We now have less than 1 hour before complete system failure. Dr. Yenna's medical training kicked in as she began to think about crew survival. Captain, we need to prepare for emergency evacuation. The escape pods are equipped with basic life support, but they are only designed for short-term use. How long can the pods sustain life? Zexai asked. 72 hours maximum, assuming optimal conditions. However, several of the pods sustained minor damage during our last docking procedure. Their life support systems may not operate at full efficiency. Captain Zexai felt the weight of command pressing down on him. His crew was depending on him to make the right decision, but their options were rapidly disappearing. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are experiencing critical engine failure. All crew members are to report to emergency stations immediately. Prepare for possible evacuation. Throughout the ship, the diverse alien crew members began moving with practiced efficiency toward their assigned emergency positions. Each species had different environmental needs, making evacuation procedures complex and challenging. The bridge crew continued their desperate attempts to stabilize the failing systems, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The ancient structure continued to float silently before them, its secrets locked away behind millions of years of mystery, as the research ship that had come to study it began to die in the cold emptiness of space. The escape pods drifted through the darkness like tiny seeds scattered by an invisible wind. Captain Zexai watched through his pod's small porthole as the starlight's edge grew smaller in the distance. The research ship's lights flickered one final time before going dark forever. The explosion that followed was silent in the vacuum of space, but the brief flash of light illuminated the ancient structure that had somehow caused their doom. Zexai activated his communication system and tried to reach his scattered crew. This is Captain Zexai calling all pods. Please respond with your status. Pod 7 responding, came Dr. Yenna's voice through the static. Her reptilian accent made her words sound different, but Zexai was relieved to hear her alive. Life support is functioning, but I have detected several system irregularities. My pod suffered damage during the evacuation. Pod 3 responding, Engineer Kill's mechanical voice crackled through the speakers. My containment suit is operating normally, but the pod's atmospheric controls are not compatible with my gaseous form. I am having to make constant adjustments to prevent system conflicts. Zexai waited for more responses, but only silence filled the communication channel. All pods, please respond. This is Captain Zexai. Captain, Dr. Yenna's voice carried a note of sadness. I am not detecting life signs from the other pods. I believe we may be the only survivors. The reality of their situation began to sink in. 3 members of his crew were dead, killed either in the ship's destruction or in pods that had failed completely. Zexai felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. As captain, every life lost was his fault. Captain, what are our options? Kill asked through the static. Zexai checked his pod's navigation system and felt his heart sink. They were drifting in 3 different directions, the distance between them growing with each passing minute. His pod's limited thrusters could not generate enough power to reach either of his surviving crew members. We are too far apart to rendezvous, he reported grimly. Our pods are not equipped for long-range maneuvering. How long do we have? Dr. Yenna asked the question they were all thinking. Zexai checked his life support readings. My systems show 68 hours of breathable atmosphere remaining. The power cells will last slightly longer, but without heat, hypothermia will become a factor. My pod is showing similar readings, Dr. Yenna confirmed. However, my reptilian metabolism allows me to enter a reduced activity state. I may be able to extend my survival time by several hours. My situation is more complex, Kill reported. The pod's atmospheric system was never designed for a gaseous being. I am having to constantly regulate the mixture to prevent my form from dispersing. This is consuming power at an accelerated rate. The three survivors fell silent as they contemplated their fate. They were alone in an uncharted sector of space, too far from any patrol routes to hope for rescue. The Galactic Research Consortium's policies were clear about deep space operations. No rescue missions would be launched for crews lost in unexplored territories. The risk to additional ships and crew was considered unacceptable. "Captain," Dr. Yenna's voice broke the silence. "Should we attempt to send a distress signal? Our communication arrays are too weak to reach any consortium stations." "From this distance," Zexai replied. "Even if we could, the nearest rescue ship is weeks away." "What about non-consortium vessels?" Kill suggested. "There are independent traders and exploration ships that sometimes travel through remote sectors." Zexai considered the possibility. "The chances are extremely small, but we have nothing to lose. Begin broadcasting on all frequencies." The three pods began transmitting their distress signals into the void. The messages contained their coordinates, species identification, and life support status. They broadcast in multiple languages, hoping that someone somewhere might hear their calls for help. Hours passed. Dr. Yenna reported that her pod's temperature was dropping as the heating system struggled to maintain livable conditions. Kill's power consumption continued to climb as he fought to keep his gaseous form stable within the incompatible atmospheric system. "I have been thinking about the ancient structure." Vorth had been the science officer, and even though she was gone, her final scans were still stored in their pod computers. The energy readings suggested some kind of active technology. What if the structure is still operational after all these millions of years? "You think it deliberately destroyed our ship?" Dr. Yenna asked. "It is possible," Zexai acknowledged. "The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Our engines failed only after we began detailed scans of the structure. A defensive system that activates when someone gets too close," Kill mused. "The first civilization was clearly more advanced than we imagined. They may have wanted to protect their secrets from future discovery. It seems we gave our lives to learn that lesson," Dr. Yenna said quietly. The communication system crackled, with static as they continued their futile distress broadcasts. Each pod was slowly drifting further from the others, carried by the complex gravitational forces of the nebula around them. Zexai checked his chronometer. 48 hours had passed since the evacuation. His life support readings showed less than 20 hours of breathable air remaining. The temperature inside his pod had dropped to near freezing levels, and he could see his breath forming small clouds in the recycled air. "Dr. Yenna, please report your status," he called over the communication system. "My reptilian physiology is helping me conserve energy," she replied, though her voice sounded weaker than before. "I estimate I have perhaps 30 hours of life support remaining. My pod's heating system failed 6 hours ago." "Kill, how are you managing?" "Not well, Captain. The power drain is severe. I calculate perhaps 12 hours before my containment systems fail completely. When that happens, my gaseous form will disperse throughout the pod and I will cease to exist." The harsh reality of their situation could no longer be ignored. They were going to die alone in the darkness of space, their distress signals unheard by anyone who could help them. The discovery that had brought them to this remote sector would die with them, the secrets of the ancient structure remaining locked away for perhaps another 1,000,000 years. "It has been an honor serving with both of you," Captain Zexai said formally. "Few crews have worked together as effectively as ours did." "The honor was mine, Captain," Dr. Yenna replied. "Agreed," Kill added. "I only regret that our final mission will remain incomplete." They continued broadcasting their distress signals more out of habit than hope, as their pods drifted further apart in the cold silence of space. The bridge of the human cruiser Ironwill buzzed with quiet activity as the crew performed their routine deep patrol duties. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the central command chair, reviewing reports from the Outer Rim territories. His weathered face showed the experience of 20 years in space, and his calm demeanor had earned him the respect of every crew member under his command. "Captain," I'm picking up something unusual on the long-range sensors, announced Chief Communications Officer Lisa Rodriguez from her station. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and quick reflexes, known throughout the ship for her ability to detect signals that others missed. Morrison walked over to her station, his heavy boots echoing on the metal deck. What kind of signal? It's very faint, sir. Multiple sources broadcasting on emergency frequencies. The signals are coming from the Vale Nebula sector. Rodriguez adjusted her controls, trying to clean up the transmission. The language patterns don't match any human colonies. Alien distress calls? Morrison asked, his interest immediately focused. Yes, sir. At least 3 different sources. They're broadcasting coordinates and what appears to be life support status information. Rodriguez frowned at her displays. The signals are getting weaker, Captain. Whatever's out there, it's in serious trouble. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his duty station, where he had been reviewing medical supply reports. Captain, if those are distress calls, shouldn't we investigate? Morrison was already moving toward the navigation station where Officer Katie Bell was plotting courses for their patrol route. Bell, what's our distance to the Vale Nebula? Bell's fingers flew across her keyboard as she calculated the navigation data. Approximately 4 days at maximum burn, sir. But Captain, that sector is well outside our patrol area. I know where it is, Bell. Morrison's voice carried the authority of command, but also something else, a determination that his crew had learned to recognize. How much fuel would the trip consume? Chief Engineer Danny Walsh spoke up from the engineering station. Captain, a round trip to the Vale Nebula would use nearly 60% of our fuel reserves. That would leave us with barely enough to reach the nearest refueling station. Morrison considered the information for a moment. The regulations were clear about patrol ships maintaining adequate fuel reserves for emergencies. Stranding his own ship and crew to investigate unknown distress calls would be considered reckless by Fleet Command. Sir, Rodriguez interrupted his thoughts. I'm losing the signals. They're getting too weak to maintain contact. Can you determine how many survivors we're dealing with? Based on the signal patterns, I estimate 3 sources, possibly 3 individuals. The transmission suggests they're in escape pods with limited life support. Dr. Turner approached the captain's station. Jake, if they're in escape pods, they don't have much time. Standard alien life support systems usually last 72 hours maximum. How long have they been broadcasting? Rodriguez checked her logs. I've been tracking the signals for the past 6 hours, but they could have been transmitting much longer before I detected them. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people, professionals who had followed him through dangerous situations before. He could see in their eyes that they understood what he was thinking. Captain, Walsh said quietly, if we attempt this rescue and something goes wrong, we could end up stranded ourselves. The fleet won't send another ship to look for us in that sector. I understand the risks, Danny. Morrison's voice was steady and sure, but we're talking about 3 lives out there. 3 people who are going to die if someone doesn't help them. Navigation Officer Bell cleared her throat. Sir, there's something else to consider. The Vale Nebula is known for gravitational anomalies and sensor interference. Finding 3 small escape pods in that environment will be extremely difficult. We've handled difficult before, Morrison replied. He turned to his communications officer. Rodriguez, can you maintain contact with those signals? I can try, sir, but the distance is working against us. Even if I boost our receivers to maximum power, I might lose them completely within the next few hours. Morrison made his decision. Bell, plot a course for the Vale Nebula, maximum burn. Walsh, I want every bit of speed you can give me from those engines. Rodriguez, do whatever you need to do to keep tracking those signals. The crew exchanged glances. They had served under Morrison long enough to know that once he made this kind of decision, there was no changing his mind. More importantly, they trusted his judgment completely. Sir, Dr. Turner said, what if these aliens are hostile? We don't know anything about their species or their intentions. They're dying, Alex. That's all I need to know. Morrison returned to his command chair as the ship began to change course. Hostile or not, no one deserves to die alone in space when we have the power to help them. Katie Bell's voice carried a note of concern as she reported from the navigation station. Captain, at our current speed, we'll reach the signal coordinates in approximately 96 hours. Based on standard life support calculations, that may be too late. Then we'll have to go faster, Morrison said simply. Walsh, what's the maximum speed this ship can handle? The chief engineer looked uncomfortable. Sir, I can push the engines beyond their normal operating parameters, but that would increase our fuel consumption even more. We'd be looking at using 70% of our reserves. Do it. Captain, Rodriguez called out. I'm detecting something else in the transmissions. These aliens aren't just calling for help. They're also broadcasting scientific data about some kind of ancient structure they discovered. Morrison leaned forward in his chair. What kind of structure? The data is fragmented, but it appears to be archaeological in nature, something very old and very large. They may have been researchers or explorers. The information added another layer to the situation. These weren't just random aliens in distress. They were scientists who had made a discovery that might be important to the entire galaxy. All the more reason to reach them in time, Morrison said. Rodriguez, send a message on all frequencies. Tell them help is coming, and to conserve their life support as much as possible. Sir, our transmission power isn't strong enough to reach them from this distance. Then we'll just have to get closer, won't we? Morrison's determination was absolute. Gentlemen, we have a rescue to perform. The Iron Will adjusted its course and increased speed, racing through space toward 3 dying aliens who had no idea that help was finally coming. The Iron Will burst through the edge of the Veil Nebula like a missile cutting through smoke. The colorful gases swirled around the ship's hull as Captain Morrison gripped his command chair, watching the sensor displays with intense focus. They had pushed their engines far beyond safe limits for the past 4 days, and now they were finally close enough to begin the search. Report, Morrison ordered, as his crew worked frantically at their stations. I'm detecting the debris field from the alien ship, Katie Bell announced from navigation. The wreckage is scattered across nearly 50,000 kilometers. The gravitational forces in this nebula are playing havoc with everything. Chief Communications Officer Lisa Rodriguez bent over her console, adjusting frequencies and power levels. Captain, I'm getting very weak signals from 2 sources. The third signal went dark about 6 hours ago. Morrison felt his chest tighten. They were already too late to save one of the survivors. Can you locate the remaining 2? Working. On it, sir. The nebula interference is making it difficult to get accurate readings. Rodriguez's voice carried the strain of someone who had been working without rest for days. Wait, I think I have something. First contact is approximately 8,000 kilometers to starboard. Second contact is much further out, maybe 25,000 kilometers. Which one is in worse condition? Based on signal strength, the closer target appears to be failing rapidly. The signal is breaking up and getting weaker by the minute. Morrison made his decision instantly. Bell, take us to the nearest contact. At maximum speed. Walsh, prepare the docking bay for emergency retrieval. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh looked up from his station with concern written across his face. Captain, we've never attempted to dock with an alien escape pod before. We don't know if our systems are compatible. Then we'll make them compatible, Morrison replied grimly. Alex, get down to the docking bay and prepare for whatever we find. We might be dealing with species we've never encountered before. Dr. Alex Turner was already gathering his medical equipment. What if their atmospheric requirements are completely different from ours? We could kill them just by opening their pod. We'll figure it out when we get there. Rodriguez, try to establish communication with whoever's in that pod. See if you can find out what we're dealing with. The Iron Will raced through the debris field, its pilot Ryan Cross working the controls with expert precision to avoid the larger pieces of wreckage. The remains of the alien research ship floated past them, like ghostly reminders of the tragedy that had brought them here. Captain, I'm getting a response to my transmission, Rodriguez reported excitedly. It's weak, but someone is definitely alive in that pod. Put it on speakers. The bridge filled with static and electronic noise before a weak voice emerged from the interference. The words were in an alien language, but the universal translator quickly processed the meaning. This is Dr. Yenna of the research vessel Starlight's Edge. Who is this? How did you find us? Morrison leaned toward the communication panel. Dr. Yenna, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Iron Will. We received your distress signal and came to help. What is your condition? There was a long pause before the alien doctor responded, and when she did, her voice carried amazement and disbelief. Human, you came all this way to rescue us? But we are strangers to your species. That doesn't matter, Doctor. We're here to get you out of there. What's your life support status? My pod systems are failing. The heating system stopped working yesterday and my oxygen supply is nearly exhausted. I estimate perhaps 2 hours remaining. Morrison exchanged glances with his crew. 2 hours was cutting it very close, especially if they had to figure out how to safely extract an unknown alien species from a damaged pod. Dr. Turner, get down to that docking bay now, Morrison ordered. Cross, bring us alongside that pod as gently as possible. The Iron Will maneuvered through the debris field until they located the alien escape pod. It was small and sleek, with a design completely unlike human spacecraft. Scorch marks along its hull showed the damage it had sustained during the evacuation. Docking bay reports ready, Captain, Walsh announced. But sir, there's a problem. The alien pod's airlock system is completely different from ours. The connections don't match. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, thinking rapidly. Can you modify our docking collar? Not quickly enough, sir. It would take hours of work, and we don't have hours. What about a manual transfer? Can we get someone in a spacesuit to retrieve the survivor? Cross looked up from his pilot controls. Captain, I can do it. The debris field is dangerous, but I can maneuver close enough to cut into their pod and extract whoever's inside. The pod's atmosphere might be toxic to humans, Dr. Turner warned over the communication system. And we don't know what this alien species needs to survive. We'll deal with those problems as they come up, Morrison decided. Cross, suit up, and get ready for EVA. Turner, prepare the medical bay for an unknown alien species. Do whatever research you can on reptilian physiology. Reptilian, sir? That's what the name suggests. Dr. Yenna sounds like it could be a reptilian species, but I could be wrong. While Cross prepared for his dangerous spacewalk, Rodriguez continued trying to communicate with the dying alien. Dr. Yenna, we're going to attempt a manual extraction. Can you tell us anything about your species' survival requirements? I am Reptani, the weak voice replied. We require warm temperatures and oxygen-rich atmosphere. My body temperature has dropped dangerously low. Dr. Turner's voice came through the intercom from the medical bay. Captain, I'm setting up heating units and preparing oxygen-rich breathing equipment. I've also researched what little we know about reptilian aliens. Their metabolism slows down in cold conditions, which might be why she's still alive. Cross appeared on the bridge wearing a full EVA suit, his helmet under his arm. Ready to go, Captain. What's the plan? Get over to that pod, cut through the hull if necessary, and bring Dr. Yenna back alive. Don't take any unnecessary risks, but don't give up if things look difficult. Understood, sir. Morrison watched through the bridge viewports as Cross launched himself from the docking bay toward the alien pod. The young pilot moved carefully through the debris field, using his suit's thrusters to navigate around the larger pieces of wreckage. Cross is at the pod, Walsh reported, monitoring the EVA from his engineering station. He's examining the hull structure now. Dr. Yenna, Rodriguez called over the communication system. Our person is at your pod. Can you move toward the airlock? We'll try, the alien replied weakly. But I am very cold and weak. My movements are slow. Morrison gripped his command chair as he watched Cross work on the alien pod's hull. They had come so far and risked so much. He refused to lose this survivor when they were so close to success. Ryan Cross worked quickly on the alien pod's hull, his cutting torch creating bright sparks that danced in the vacuum of space. The pod's metal was unlike anything he had worked with before, but his training and determination pushed him forward. Through his helmet radio, he could hear Dr. Yenna's increasingly weak voice as she tried to guide him to the safest entry point. The atmospheric seal is located near the base of the pod, she whispered, her words barely audible through the static. But please be careful. If you damage the wrong systems, the remaining air will escape. Cross examined the pod's structure carefully. The alien design was elegant but completely foreign to human engineering. I think I found it, Doctor. Just hold on a little longer. Inside the Iron Will's medical bay, Dr. Alex Turner prepared equipment he had never thought he would need. He had improvised heating blankets, oxygen masks modified for unknown facial structures, and medications that might work on reptilian physiology. It was all guesswork, but it was better than doing nothing. Captain, Cross reported through his radio. I've cut through the outer hull. The pod's interior atmosphere is venting slowly, but I can see movement inside. The survivor is definitely alive. Can you reach her? Morrison asked from the bridge. Working on it, sir. The pod's interior is cramped and Dr. Yenna appears to be barely conscious. I'm going to have to physically pull her out. Cross squeezed through the opening he had created and found himself face to face with his first alien. Dr. Yenna was indeed reptilian, with green, scaled skin and large amber eyes that watched him with a mixture of hope and fear. She was shivering violently from the cold, her movements slow and sluggish. Dr. Yenna, I'm Ryan Cross from the human ship. I'm here to get you out of this pod. The alien doctor nodded weakly. I cannot move well. The cold has affected my motor functions. Cross carefully lifted the alien in his arms, surprised by how light she felt in the low-gravity environment. Her scales were cold to the touch even through his suit's gloves, and he could feel her weak breathing against his chest. I've got her, he reported to the ship. Bringing her back now. The return trip to the Iron Will took precious minutes as Cross navigated carefully through the debris field while carrying his delicate cargo. Dr. Yenna's breathing became more labored as they traveled, and Cross pushed his suit's thrusters, harder to reach the docking bay faster. Dr. Turner was waiting in the airlock as Cross arrived with the alien survivor. The medical officer took one look at Dr. Yenna's condition and immediately went to work. Her body temperature is dangerously low, Turner announced as he carefully placed the alien on a heated medical gurney. I'm seeing signs of severe hypothermia and oxygen deprivation. Dr. Yenna's eyes fluttered open as the warming blankets began to take effect. The others, she whispered. Captain Zexai and Engineer Kill. Are they alive? Turner looked toward the bridge communication system. Captain, our patient is asking about the other survivors. Morrison's voice came through the speakers. Dr. Yenna, we detected 2 other signals. We're going after them as soon as you're stable. Kill's pod is failing faster than the captain's, Dr. Yenna managed to say. He is a gaseous being. His pod was not designed for his species. Turner frowned as he worked to stabilize her vital signs. A gaseous being? I have no idea how to treat someone like that. You must create a contained atmosphere for him, Dr. Yenna explained weakly. If his gaseous form disperses, he will die. On the bridge, Morrison was already planning the next rescue. Rodriguez, do we still have contact with the other survivor? Pods? I'm tracking one strong signal about 20,000 kilometers away. That must be Captain Zexai. The other signal is much weaker and intermittent. The weak signal is probably the gaseous being's pod, Morrison decided. That's our next target. Bell, plot a course. Dr. Turner continued working on Dr. Yenna, using every piece of medical knowledge he possessed. The alien's physiology was similar enough to Earth reptiles that some of his treatments seemed to be helping, but there were significant differences that challenged his understanding. Dr. Yenna said softly, why did your people come for us? We are strangers. Our species have barely had contact before. Turner looked down at the alien patient with compassion. Because that's what humans do. We don't leave people to die when we can help them. But you risked your ship and crew for us. This is not logical by galactic standards. Maybe not, Turner admitted, but it's the right thing to do. The Iron Will raced through space toward Engineer Kill's failing pod. When they arrived, the situation was even more desperate than they had feared. The pod was barely functioning, its power systems nearly drained. I can barely detect life signs, Rodriguez reported. Whatever's in there won't last much longer. Cross, still in his EVA suit, prepared for another dangerous rescue. This pod looks even worse than the first one. The hull is cracked in several places. Walsh had been working frantically in the engineering section to prepare for a gaseous alien. Captain, I've rigged a containment chamber using spare atmospheric processors. It's not perfect, but it might keep a gaseous being stable. Do it, Morrison ordered. Cross approached the second pod carefully. Unlike Dr. Yenna's pod, this one was venting atmosphere rapidly through multiple hull breaches. When he cut through the airlock, he was met with a sight unlike anything he had ever seen. Engineer Kill was indeed a gaseous being, his form swirling within a mechanical containment suit that was sparking and failing. The alien's consciousness seemed to flicker like a flame in the wind as his gaseous form struggled to maintain cohesion. This is more complicated than I thought, Cross reported. The alien is wearing some kind of containment suit, but it's damaged. I don't know how to move him safely. Dr. Yenna's voice came weakly through the medical bay speakers. You must transfer his suit's power to your ship's systems. The suit is what keeps his gaseous form stable. Walsh worked quickly to establish a power connection between the alien's suit and the Iron Will's electrical systems. It was dangerous work, connecting incompatible technologies while Cross held the dying alien in the vacuum of space. Got it, Walsh announced. Power is flowing to the alien's suit. Engineer Kill's gaseous form slowly began to stabilize as fresh power flowed through his containment systems. Cross carefully brought the alien back to the ship, where Walsh's improvised atmospheric chamber waited. 2 down, 1 to go, Morrison said with grim satisfaction. But he knew the hardest part was still ahead. Captain Zexai was the furthest away, and their fuel reserves were running dangerously low. The Iron Will raced through space toward the final rescue target, its engines straining against the limits of their design. Captain Morrison watched the fuel gauges with growing concern as Chief Engineer Danny Walsh reported their dwindling reserves. Captain, we're down to 30% fuel remaining, Walsh announced grimly. If we use much more, we won't have enough to reach the nearest refueling station. Morrison's jaw tightened. They had come so far and saved 2 lives already. But the thought of leaving Captain Zexai to die alone was unacceptable. How much fuel do we need for the rescue operation? That depends on how long it takes to locate and retrieve the survivor, sir. The pod's signal is weak and intermittent. We might have to search for hours. In the medical bay, Dr. Alex Turner worked to keep both rescued aliens stable. Dr. Yenna was recovering slowly under the heat lamps, her reptilian physiology responding well to the warmer environment. Engineer Kill floated in the improvised atmospheric chamber, his gaseous form finally stabilized by the ship's power systems. Dr. Turner, Dr. Yenna called weakly from her medical bed. How close are we to finding Captain Zexai? We're heading to his location now, Turner replied, checking her vital signs. Your captain is going to be fine. These humans don't give up easily. Kill's mechanical voice spoke from his containment chamber. I have monitored their conversations. They are risking their own survival to save someone they have never met. This behavior is unprecedented in galactic civilization. Dr. Yenna nodded slowly. They could have saved themselves fuel and effort by leaving after rescuing us, but they refused to abandon anyone. On the bridge, Communications Officer Lisa Rodriguez suddenly straightened at her station. Captain, I'm getting a clearer signal. From the 3rd pod. Distance is approximately 5,000 kilometers in closing. Any response to our communications? Morrison asked. Negative, sir. The pod appears to be in emergency power mode. Life support is minimal. Navigation Officer Katie Bell worked her controls frantically. Captain, I'm detecting the pod on visual scanners. It's tumbling slowly and appears to be badly damaged. Morrison could see the alien escape pod through the bridge viewports. It was larger than the other 2, but it looked like it had been through a battle. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections appeared to be breached. Cross, are you ready for another EVA? Morrison asked. Ryan Cross was already suiting up for his 3rd dangerous spacewalk. Ready, Captain. This one looks like it's going to be challenging. Take extra cutting equipment. That pod looks like it's been through hell. Cross launched himself toward the damaged pod, moving carefully through the debris field. As he approached, He could see that the pod's condition was even worse than it had appeared from the ship. Multiple hull breaches had sealed themselves with emergency foam, but the entire structure looked fragile. "Captain, this pod is barely holding together," Cross reported. "I'm detecting very faint life signs, but the occupant appears to be unconscious. Can you get inside?" "Working on it, sir. The main airlock is completely destroyed. I'll have to cut through the emergency access panel." Cross worked quickly with his cutting torch, knowing that every second counted. When he finally broke through the pod's hull, he found Captain Zexai unconscious and barely breathing. The four-armed alien's crystalline skin had lost its blue tint and appeared almost transparent. "I found him," Cross announced. "He's alive but in bad shape. Looks like severe hypothermia and oxygen deprivation." "Get him back here immediately," Dr. Turner ordered from the medical bay. Cross carefully extracted the alien captain from his damaged pod. Zexai was heavier than Dr. Yenna had been, and his forearms made him difficult to carry, but Cross managed to secure him safely for the trip back to the Iron Will. Dr. Turner was waiting with additional medical equipment when Cross arrived with the third survivor. "His physiology is completely different from the reptilian," Turner observed as he began emergency treatment. "I'm seeing signs of a dual circulatory system and what appears to be silicon-based cellular structure." Captain Zexai's eyes slowly opened as the medical equipment began to stabilize his condition. He looked around the human medical bay with confusion and wonder. "Where am I?" he asked weakly, his voice carrying a musical quality that the universal translator struggled to process. "You're aboard the human ship Iron Will," Dr. Turner explained gently. "We rescued you from your escape pod." "Humans?" Zexai's four eyes widened in surprise. "But why? We are not your people." Dr. Yenna spoke from her nearby medical bed. "Captain, they came for all of us. They risked their own ship to save strangers." Zexai turned his head to see his surviving crew members safe and recovering. "Dr. Yenna, Kill, you are alive. How is this possible?" "The humans detected our distress signals and came to rescue us," Engineer Kill explained from his atmospheric chamber. "They have shown compassion beyond anything known in galactic civilization." The bridge, Morrison was dealing with the consequences of their rescue mission. "Walsh, what's our fuel status?" "We're down to 22%, Captain. That's barely enough to reach the nearest human outpost, and only if we make no course corrections." "Plot a course for home," Morrison ordered. "We've done what we came to do." Days later, as the Iron Will limped toward the nearest human station, the three alien survivors had recovered enough to move around the ship. They spent their time learning about human culture and philosophy, amazed by the concept of risking everything to help others. Captain Zexai found Morrison on the bridge during a quiet moment. "Captain Morrison, I must ask you something that troubles me. Why did your people save us? What do you gain from this rescue?" Morrison considered the question seriously. "We gain the knowledge that 3 intelligent beings are alive instead of dead. That's enough. But you risked your ship, your crew, your fuel reserves. By galactic standards, this was an inefficient use of resources." "Maybe so," Morrison acknowledged. "But by human standards, it was the only choice we could make." The story of the rescue spread quickly throughout the galaxy when the Iron Will finally reached port. 3 alien species had been saved by humans who asked for nothing in return. The tale became legendary, changing how many civilizations viewed humanity. Dr. Yenna, Captain Zexai, and Engineer Kill became ambassadors for a new kind of cooperation between species. They established the first interspecies rescue protocols, teaching other civilizations that sometimes the most important resource was compassion. The ancient structure they had discovered in the Veil Nebula was eventually explored by a joint expedition. When archaeologists finally translated its central message, they found words that seemed written specifically for humanity. The greatest civilizations are measured not by their power, but by their willingness to help those in need. Captain Morrison continued his deep space patrols, always listening for distress signals, always ready to help whoever needed it. The Iron Will became known throughout the galaxy as a ship that would come for anyone, anywhere, no matter the cost. In the end, the three aliens learned that humans had a simple philosophy that guided their actions. No one should die alone in the darkness when help was possible. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come.